It's time for CBJ in 30, presented by Telhio Credit Union. Find us on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play Music, YouTube, and TuneIn. The easiest thing to do is tell Alexa or Siri to play CBJ in 30. Here's your host, Bob McElligott.
Another day, another new player for the Blue Jackets, to which I say, why not? Welcome to a Monday Mailbag edition of CBJ in 30, presented by Telhio Credit Union. Yesterday, it was announced by the London Knights that Blue Jackets 2018 first-round draft pick Liam Foudy is going to be coming to the Blue Jackets tonight to make his NHL debut. Now, this is a bit of a surprise. Not often do players get called out of the Ontario Hockey League and come to the NHL. There has to be a special set of circumstances. You have to have X amount of injuries. It has to be on an emergency basis. It can only be for a total of 5 games. It's only going to be one. The reports are that he's going to come up to play tonight and be back in London by Tuesday. But I think this is a good thing. It's certainly a good thing for Liam Foudy, who didn't get to play in the preseason this year. He got hurt during the Traverse City tournament. He didn't play during the preseason. He was on the injured reserve list at the start of the regular season before he got sent back to London. And boy, he has done a lot of things since he has gotten back there, including helping Canada win a gold medal at the World Junior Championships. In addition to that, he is a point-a-game player this year. Again, he's got 20 goals. He's got a lot of potential. That's why he was a first-round pick. Is he ready to play in the NHL? Well, we're going to find out tonight. And the way this season has gone for the Blue Jackets, where there is an unexpected hero each and every day, it is no surprise. I mean, yeah, it was a surprise. Listen, yesterday I had a lot of stuff going on and was kind of out of touch, and when I looked and saw this news late last night, I was surprised. I'm not going to lie to you. But I guess it shouldn't be a surprise in a season like this one, where we have seen so many different players, where we have seen so much of the depth of this organization, and I'm excited about watching Liam Foudy play tonight, because the one thing that he possesses is all-out speed. And when the Blue Jackets drafted him in 2018, with that first pick, they said immediately, this is a guy we're not going to rush. This is a guy we don't need to rush. He needs to develop more. We have a team in Columbus where we can allow him to go to junior and become a better player. And that's what they have done with him. But right now they have an opportunity to take a look at him in an NHL game. It'll be a game against a very competitive opponent, and why not take that shot? Why not give him the opportunity, give him a little bit of extra pep in his step, if you will, and see what you've got? Because you've seen just about the entire development system, right? You've seen just about every guy that's with the Cleveland Monsters. Why not take a look at Liam Foudy and see what he looks like? It's one game, but a lot of things can happen in one game. So, again, I'm excited about it tonight. I hope that you're excited about it, too. And as I open up the Monday mailbag, I'm going to go to Twitter for the very first question. And I have some voice questions from you, too, but bear with me here. Nick Johnson is going to get the first question because Nick says, with the news of Foudy being called up and goal production down, who would be one or two guys you think the Blue Jackets might look at before the trade deadline? I've heard some rumors about Jean-Gabriel Pageau and Kyle Turris. Would it take a lot to get a guy like that? Well, Nick, here's the thing. Of the two guys that you mentioned, first of all, Jean-Gabriel Pageau, this is going to be an interesting situation to watch because he is a center, and he can play up and down the lineup, and he can do a lot of good things. And it's interesting because he is going to be an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season. So even though the Blue Jackets have done some trades with the Ottawa Senators, and there is a good history there, to get Pageau, he would be, it appears that he would be a rental player because he has a chance to be a very big piece on the unrestricted free agent market this summer. As a matter of fact, depending upon how things fall, he could be one of the biggest, if not the biggest piece on the UFA list come summertime. So you've got to watch with that one. That's going to be expensive, and if you're not able to sign him, then it's not going to be worth it. Kyle Turris. This is an interesting situation with Turris because he has slid down the depth chart in Nashville. Once they got Matt Duchene, he gets pushed down to the number 3 spot, maybe 4 spot, because You've got Ryan Johansson, Matt Duchene, Kyle Turris, and Nick Bonino as centermen there, right down the middle. So here's my thing with Turris. Look, I don't know Kyle Turris. I just know what I see when the Blue Jackets play against him. I know what I read. I know what the numbers have been. But this is a guy that has bounced around the league a little bit, all right? He was in Arizona. His agent basically held the Coyotes hostage until he got out of there. He was in Ottawa. They liked him in Ottawa. But when they swung the deal so that they could get Matt Duchene, Nashville got involved in that deal, and then Kyle Turris went to Nashville. They're not happy with him in Nashville right now. And I don't know. There's just something about this situation with this guy. He can be productive, I get it, but he's been around a lot of different places. And sometimes when a guy starts bouncing, you start to scratch your head and wonder why that guy's bouncing around. And this is, I'm talking my perspective here, okay? So I don't know. What of the two guys, of those two guys, and I'm not saying I want either one of them, but Pageau I think would be more expensive because he's going to be an unrestricted free agent. I also think he would be a rental, which is not what Jarmo Kekalainen is going to be in the market for, in my opinion. Turris, you might be able to get a guy like that a little bit cheaper. I think if it was me and I was looking to Nashville to find a centerman, I'd be wondering what I could do to get Nick Bonino out of there. And he's got term left on his contract. He also has a couple of Stanley Cup rings. So personally, if I was looking at it and I was talking to them, Turris might be on my list, but he would be below Nick Bonino for me. But I'm not the guy making the trades anyway. But I appreciate the question, Nick. All right, let's get to some voice questions and start it off with this.
Hey, Bobby. This is Mark from Youngstown, Ohio. I have two questions for you today. I was listening to your Time Out with Torts podcast, and I was wondering, what is the new motto on the wall? I know in past seasons, safe is death was hanging on the wall, and during the podcast, Torts mentioned good gets in the way of greatness. Is that the new team motto on the wall? My second question is, with the recent All-Star game and Anthony Duclair being an All-Star selection, do you wish you could have seen him stay in Columbus and be developed under Torts and see the progression that he could have made as we've seen with Sonny Milano?
Well, Mark, very good. You get a gold star. You listened intently to my Time Out with Torts podcast last week and picked up something from it. And then the Anthony Duclair question I really like, and I'll get to that in just a moment. But the sign in the dressing room says, good is the enemy of great. And what that means is, if you think you're good and you're okay with yourself, you think you're good, okay. But that is going to stop you from becoming great. You always have to strive for more. And that's essentially what it's saying. And it's right there. Yes, safe as death was one that has been talked about for the last couple of years. Now they have pulled that back quite a bit. You look at it's funny because as well as the Blue Jackets play defensively, there was a time the other night against Colorado where I did look up and Zach Werenski was down in one corner and Seth Jones was down in the other corner. And I'm talking about in the offensive zone, not in the defensive zone. So they are still safe as death. I think it depends upon who you are, and it certainly depends upon what the situation is at any time. But good is the enemy of great. I like that, too. Because think about it. It just makes good common sense. If you think that you're good, if you think there's nothing you need to do better, then you are never going to be great. You're not. And that's not just in hockey. That's in life. If you don't strive to be the best that you can, if you think you're at your best and you think there is nothing more that you can do, you'll never know because you'll never strive to be any better, and you'll never be any better than you are right now. So, yeah, it's a great sign. It's a great motivational thing. When you're there every day, you see it, and you don't think about it every single day. I hope the players do. I know Torch reminds them about it, but that is the sign. Good is the enemy of great. Now, to get to your Anthony Duclair question, do I wish he would have stayed and developed more under John Tortorella? Of course I do. And I'll tell you why. Because he was making progress, and he has the one element that you cannot teach, and that is speed. His speed is unbelievable. Now, what he is doing this year, being in the All-Star game and all of that stuff, people tend to look and say the Blue Jackets didn't do a good job in that trade. And there's an argument to be had there just based on his season. But let me remind you, when they got Ryan Dzingel, he had really good numbers with the Ottawa Senators. And then he came to the Blue Jackets, and he didn't have really good numbers, and he didn't really fit in, and it wasn't the same. What I'm saying to you is not to take a shot at Anthony Duclair, because I think he's a great person. I like him as a player. But when you're playing for Ottawa, you're going to get on the top line. You're going to get more minutes. You're going to get more opportunities. And as the saying goes, sometimes it's easier to score goals on a bad team because there are zero expectations and because you are getting elevated to a line where you're getting so many more chances. Anthony Duclair still wasn't going to be a number one winger on this team. That's just a fact. The way he was going to be used here is different. Just go all the way back to the William Karlsson thing when he had his 40 goals in Vegas. How could the Blue Jackets not find a way to get this out of him? Well, the opportunity didn't present itself. The way the lineup was structured at the time, he was further down in the lineup. He goes to Vegas, and that's a clean slate. They can start wherever they want. And he has a good camp, and they put him on the one line. So, keep that in mind, too, that there is sometimes you got to move somewhere else to get a better opportunity just because of the talent that is around you. And that's the way it was with Anthony Duclair. But, yeah, I would have loved to seen him stay here and continue to develop because he was a good guy. His teammates loved him. And, as I said, that speed, you cannot teach speed. And hopefully we're going to see some of that speed from Liam Foudy when he makes his NHL debut tonight. On to the next question.
Hey, Bob, this is Dave in New York City. I grew up in New Albany, though. I'm at every game up here on the East Coast, even when it involves going, God forbid, to New Jersey. My question has to do with Dubinsky. When he does come back, what are we going to do? Other than winning face-offs and being a bee in the bonnet with his physical play of other teams, he hasn't really been producing. I know he's still got a year left on his contract before he's a free agent. Is he movable at this point? I don't particularly want him to go anywhere, but I've been noticing that we've been having a lot more issues with neutral zone turnovers. Do we move him to shore up the center position a little bit more and give up some of the physical play that Torts has always been pushing for? What are your thoughts with what his role will be when he comes back?
Dave, I would love to pontificate with my thoughts on what will happen when Brandon Dubinsky returns. It's just that I don't have any indication that he is going to return. Here we are in February, and now we're getting toward the middle of February. Brandon Dubinsky hasn't been seen or heard from, for the most part, since training camp, since he played the first couple of games during training camp. Again, the word is that his wrist continues to bother him. He continues to rehab it, but he's not making progress. He has not been around. He has not been part of the team. So is he movable? The answer is no. He's not movable because he can't even play. And to talk about him coming back, look, it could happen at some point, but right now I just don't see it. I see him as being a non-factor in all of this. Now, I do think that the play at center will get better when Alexander Wenberg comes back because I think he had just turned the corner and finally had his game going in the way that he wanted it to. As a matter of fact, I talked to him about that at the Cannonball last week, about his disappointment with suffering his injury, and he was feeling good about his game, and it was noticeable. It was noticeable how much better he was playing. John Tortorella has said that he was really, headed back in the right direction with what he was doing, and now all of a sudden he's not there. And that has hurt the center position. If he was still playing right now and playing like he was before he got hurt, there wouldn't be as much concern. Now, is that a position that still needs looked at? Is it a position that still needs to be strengthened within the organization? Yes, it is. There's no doubt about that. But that will alleviate some of that centerman pain when Alexander Wenberg's able to come back. But again, Brandon Dubinsky, it's just a fact. He's not in the conversation. There is absolutely nothing that you can look forward to at this point in time with him. And whether it's moving him or having him come back, there's just nothing. There's nothing. So I hate to burst the bubble on the question, but that's the honest answer to the question. And, oh, by the way, I'm glad that you do follow the Blue Jackets on the East Coast. everywhere. And yes, I too am sorry that you have to go to New Jersey. All right, let's get one more voice question today.
Hey, Bob, this is Fennec in UA, and I got a mailbag question for you. So I was looking at the standings this morning and noticed that 6 of the top 11 teams in the league are in the Metro Division. As a result, Philly, the number 11 team in the league, would not make the playoffs under the current format. I'm not really a big fan of the divisional format and would like to see more of a traditional 1 through 8 seeding. Do you think there's any chance the league gets rid of this silly format anytime soon? Thanks.
Well, Fennec, that's a very good question. Now, the NHL keeps saying that they like the format the way that it is, that they're not looking to change the format. But, of course, every year there's somebody that's unhappy about the format. There's always a team or maybe a couple of teams that are unhappy about it. And I would like to see the old 1 versus 8 alignment, to be honest with you. You can keep the divisions, and you can have your division winners go in at the top, and you can seed everybody else accordingly if you want to. And I know why you want to keep the divisions, because you want to try to keep regional rivalries intact and all that stuff. And I think that that's fair because, look, the Blue Jackets used to be in the West, and their quote-unquote rival, remember in the early years it was Nashville because they were similar in age, the two franchises, and Nashville was looking for footing and all that stuff. That never really worked out, quite frankly. And then they got better than the Blue Jackets more quickly, and then it really didn't work out. The rivalry, if you will, with Detroit because of the proximity and distance, well, guess what? Detroit at that time was the opposite of what they are right now, and the Blue Jackets, despite getting into the playoffs one time against the Red Wings, that really didn't work out. But now here in this Metropolitan Division, it's worked out nicely. I mean, you're with Pittsburgh in the same division, which makes sense. You get to play them 4 times a year. Some of the other teams, you've got the Rangers thing kind of fell off right after the Rick Nash trade. That was a pretty good rivalry, and that has faded. But now Artemi Panarin is there, so that gives it a little bit of juice. I like this division, and I'm, growing up, I followed the Patrick division, which is mostly what this is, but I just like you've got to be in the same division as Pittsburgh. You've got to have a divisional rivalry. So, again, I can see the league keeping divisions, but yes, when it comes to the playoff seeding, I think it would be nice just to take your 2 division winners, and even people will complain about that if the Atlantic Division winner doesn't have as many points as the second-place team in the Metropolitan Division. I get it. But if you want to keep some relevancy when it comes to the divisions, put your division winners 1 and 2, and then take the next 6 teams and see where it goes from there. So I would be fine with that. But, again, the NHL says, at least at this point, that they are just okay with the way things are working and are in no hurry to change it. So we'll see if anybody changes their mind as it goes along. All right, let's go back to Twitter, at Bobby Mac Sports, and get some more questions like this one from Shane, who is talking about the loss against the Colorado Avalanche on Saturday, 2-1. Disappointing loss for the Blue Jackets. They just needed some scoring, for crying out loud. Their defense was terrific. They just didn't get scoring, and they had plenty of chances, especially on the power play, which, oh, by the way, didn't magically fix itself as this season has gone on. Anyway, here's Shane's question. Do you think the Jackets land needed to see Elvis lose in this fashion to bring them back to earth? So many fans were seemingly ready to never let Jonas Korpisalo in the crease again. I feel this loss is really important for player, team, and fan base alike. Shane, I wanted to talk about this because I think you're right. I think it should be a little bit of an eye-opening loss when it comes to Elvis Merzlikins. Now, before you get all bent out of shape, I'm not jumping on Elvis, but I will be honest with you. I think that he could have and maybe should have stopped both of the shots that went into the net on Saturday. He even said that himself, but I think that he should have. Now, is it fair to ask him to pitch a shutout every night? No, that's not fair. His team, as well as they play defensively, they've got to give him more offensively. You can't expect him to give up 0 goals per night, although he's been pretty good at it. Okay? But, yes, this whole thing, this Elvis phenomenon, you've got to be careful about it. You really do. And John Tortorella has said in a press conference earlier this week, it's not the Elvis show. And it's not. It's the Blue Jackets show. Elvis is a part of it. And he's been a big part of it. But we can't get into a situation here, and this is what Shane's question makes me think of. when he says there are people that don't want to see Korpisalo back in net, or they wouldn't want to give him back the crease. We cannot get into two camps here. There can't be the Corpy camp and the Elvis camp. There just can't be. I mean, there can be, but it's not going to matter. It's going to take both of these guys to win. And I think both of them are going to help this team to win. And as a fan base, don't get locked into this and say you've got to have this guy over the other guy. It's a team thing. Everything that this group has done has been as a team. It's true with the goaltending. It will continue to be true with the goaltending when Joonas Korpisalo is back. But I think, to your question, I think it is kind of important. And listen, I read the stuff that's being written about this team. I read the stuff that's being written about that guy. And he's terrific, and he's got the charisma and the personality, and he put up 5 shutouts in 8 games and all that. I'm not taking anything away from him. He's played very, very well. I think he's got a long, long way to go to be the superstar he is being built up to be in the media. And even after the game, I saw some things written that were basically excusing him from things. But, if you write to build a guy up and put him at the top of the mountain, when something happens where he gets knocked off the mountain, you don't turn around and jump right on him and say it's his fault that he fell off the mountain. You come back and you say other things like, well, it's his first time through the league. He hadn't seen these players before. Okay? Look. It's Jody Shelley says this all the time. If his name wasn't Elvis, would he get as much publicity as he has? And the answer, probably not, quite honestly. If his name was Bill and he was still playing lights out, we'd be excited about Bill. But you get super excited about Elvis. And Elvis becomes a phenomenon. Again, it cannot happen. Elvis is part of a team. He is not the team. So, Shane, that's a very good question, and I appreciate that. Next question comes from Lucas Campbell, and Lucas says, with some of the NHL teams having ECHL affiliates, do you think the Blue Jackets should have one? I would love to see the Toledo Walleye be the affiliate to the Cleveland Monsters. Well, Lucas, this is a good question, and I'll tell you what they've done in Toledo with the ECHL has been nothing short of amazing. I mean, the Toledo Storm was big there for a long time in the old sports arena. I used to go there and call games, and it was a dump, and that's why it's no longer there. But they have the brand-new building downtown. They do a terrific job there, and Dan Watson is the head coach there. And Dan was with the Blue Jackets organization when they first started. He played in Syracuse as a defenseman in the first couple of years there, and he's doing a really good job with what's going on. Here's the thing about the ECHL. And the Blue Jackets have only a couple of players in that league, and when they do, they put them in Jacksonville, Florida. And so here's the point. You don't – in the American Hockey League, you basically, for lack of a better term, you field the whole team. I guess I should say you ice the team. You field the whole team in the AHL. Everybody is under contract with you, whether it's a one-way American League deal or a two-way American League, National League deal. Okay? So you are supplying all of those players. In the ECHL, you're not going to supply the players for a full team. That's just not how it works because of the number of contracts that you are allotted as an organization. You're burning up those in the NHL. In the AHL, you've got guys that have contracts that haven't yet started playing pro. So you're not going to put together an entire ECHL team. You're only going to have a handful of guys at the most. So when you talk about an affiliate, sometimes – so let's just say Toledo, okay? So they have to get their own players. So Dan Watson's out getting his own players, and Dan has – he's got 18 – well, he's got to have more than that. He's got 23 players, okay? And he signed some players that he's got to get playing time to, and now you have 5 players that need playing time. He might not have it, whereas another team might have that playing time for those players to develop. So it goes two ways. Way back when I was in Johnstown with the Chiefs, we affiliated with the Calgary Flames, and we got 4 or 5 guys through that affiliation that year. But it comes and goes. You might have 5, you might have 2, so sometimes it's easier just to find out who has roster room and move them there. But I understand the question, and yes, that would be a good spot. Cincinnati would be a good spot too. Let's be honest about it. But But that's why it works like it works, because you're not getting 20 guys. You're only getting a couple of guys. And finally, I want to end with this one. And look, I get a lot of questions. I'm getting a ton of questions now, and I love it. And I'm sorry I can't get to every single one of them. But this is, 30 minutes. And the voice questions I love a lot. And I want to remind you, if you want to keep sending those, all you have to do, go on your phone and just do a voice message and email it to me. Send it to bobbymac@bluejackets.com. I love those because I love to hear your voice. I love to hear how you ask the question. A lot of times you can hear the passion in the question itself. So just send it to me. Your name, where you're from, and your question. It's very, very simple. I love those. But, again, this is an allotment show. I'm going to get to what I think are the best of the best. And then I'm going to get to something fun right here at the very end. And this is from JP without hyphens. And it says, being the parent of a goalie, do you have any advice for parents with a son just starting out playing goalie? My 10-year-old recently started for a team late in the season. Well, my first bit of advice is turn him into a defenseman. Get him out of the crease. Make him a forward. Every goalie is a frustrated forward. All right, I'm kidding. I'm literally just kidding about that. The real advice for being a goalie is you've got to make sure that he's got thick skin. And I say that because they're going to get blamed for everything. I just blamed Elvis for 2 goals in a 2-1 game, okay? They're going to get blamed for everything. I did that, and I'm a goalie parent, for crying out loud. Now, I did say that it's not fair to ask him to pitch a shutout every night. I say that to my son all the time if they lose 2-1. I say, well, the last time I checked, if your team only scores 1, you have to give up 0, and that's not fair. So I say the same thing here in the NHL. But they've got to be thick-skinned because they're going to get blamed for everything. It might be by their teammates. It might be by their coach. It's less about those people saying that to them, but, other people from the outside could say it. They could overhear it. But here's the thing. To be honest with you, when it comes to that, the player usually won't hear much of anything. My advice is to you as a goalie parent. You're the one that has to be even more thick-skinned because you are going to hear everything. You are going to hear every other parent. First of all, you can't sit with the parents, okay? You can't sit in the group. You got to move. You got to go somewhere else. You got to go down to the end of the rink. Simple as that. My wife she's been to every one of my son's games, and she doesn't sit with the group. You can't, because everything that happens, it's a goalie's fault. So you have to be really thick-skinned and have to know that if the forward would have made a play in the neutral zone, or if the defenseman would have cleared the zone instead of giving it away, there wouldn't have been a shot and it wouldn't be in the net regardless. You've got to know that there were 3 mistakes made in front of the goalie before the puck went in the net, and that there are other people to blame. Because at the end of the day, it'll only be your kid that's going to get blamed in many cases. So you've got to be very thick-skinned. And you move from end to end. You can go down. Sometimes you stand behind the glass, behind your son on one end, and then at the end of the period, go down to the other end and stand. That's how it works. And you'll pass the other goalie parents in transition. If you're sitting in the stands, you know exactly who the goalie parents are because you see them walk from one side to the other. So that's the advice to you. But actually, for your son, yeah, he does have to be thick-skinned because, and any player, if you screw up as a defenseman, are you going to turn around and say, oh, that's my fault? At 10 years old, probably not. But the other thing about it is he's got to be mentally strong. He's got to be a good skater. There's a misconception that goalies are not good skaters. They have to be terrific skaters. So make sure that he works on his skating and does power skating in the summertime. Get to be the best skater that you can. Get to be patient. You need to be technical in today's game, but there's also the athletic part of it. As we see with Elvis, he's technical, but hey, there are times when technical goes out the window, and you've got to do whatever you can to stop the puck. So technical and athletic, and you can't blame your teammates. Take this lesson from what Jonas Korpisalo went through earlier this year. This is twofold. I said he's got to be thick-skinned if anybody blames him for giving up something, but he also can't give blame to others. He can't, you can't yell at your defenseman. You can't yell at your forwards. At times you can. if it's blatant and it's a really big mistake or something like that. But for the most part, your job as a goalie is to shut your mouth, stop the puck, and that's the kind of example that you lead by. So I hope that helps. And if there's any more that you want, just send me another message, and I'll be glad to get back to you on that, because it's a small fraternity, right? Goalie parents are small fraternities. And again, I haven't had to deal with it much at all. The majority of the games that he has played, I haven't seen. It is my wife that has seen them all, and she's gone through the ringer on all of it, and it is extremely fun at times, and it's extremely disappointing at other times. But it's an adventure. Oh, and I guess here's the last bit of advice that I would give. Don't let them start to design their own gear. And if they do start to design their own gear on a computer, have a lot of money to pay for it if you're going to allow them to get it, because you're not going to find much cheap stuff. That is the last piece of advice that I will leave you with. Anyway, thanks for all your questions today. I do appreciate them. Again, you can send me a voice memo of your question, name, where you're from, and the question. Just voice memo it on your phone. Email it to me, BobbyMac@BlueJackets.com. Or you can just send it to me via Twitter. It's really easy, @BobbyMacSports on Twitter. Blue Jackets and the Tampa Bay Lightning going head-to-head tonight at Nationwide Arena. Game time is 7:30. This is a nationally televised game tonight, which means it's one of my favorites, because if you would like the perspective that you love, which is the Blue Jackets perspective, well, then the only place you can get it is on the Blue Jackets radio network tonight, and that will be on 97.1 The Fan in Columbus, all across the Blue Jackets radio network throughout the state of Ohio. BlueJackets.com, the Blue Jackets app, the NHL app, and on SiriusXM Radio, we will be on XM Channel 219 tonight. Blue Jackets and the Tampa Bay Lightning, the debut of Liam Foudy, the Blue Jackets' #1 selection from the 2018 draft. It is all happening at Nationwide Arena. Until then, I'm Bob McElligott saying so long.